All signs point to you. Are you an astrology curioso, a devotee, or a naysayer? Today is absolutely the show for you. Jordanna, hello. How are you?
Hello, I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. And when I heard you were doing this book, I was so excited because we've done a club member masterclass on astrology and people
Yeah.
were just blown away. So I kind of already knew the response that the book would have based on our little microcosm group. And I remember when I had you on the podcast the first time, we talked about the moon. So my
Right.
first question for you is, was looking into astrology as someone who's passionate about self-awareness and helping people through your work and books sort of find themselves and their best version more. Was it something that you were actually doing for yourself first? I'm always interested in how those journeys play out.
Yeah, well, I was running moon circles, which is must have been when
Yes.
we were chatting, and I started my podcast Lunar Lover, which is pretty much about walking people through the moon. That's how it started anyway. And I began studying astrology just for myself, just to enhance those circles and enhance my understanding of the lunar cycle.
Mm,
Once I started studying astrology, I realized how complex it was and that there was so much more to it than what I had been experiencing through reading horoscopes or, I mean, this was before social media, but what a lot of people now are reading on social media and what I refer to as junk food astrology. So I really wanted to dive deep into it. So I spent 6 years studying astrology behind the
mhm.
scenes, pretty much for my own benefit, so that I could understand myself better and also understand my friends and my family and my partner better. But I never wanted to write a book about it because I felt like it was a topic that was so big and so complex that I would never have enough knowledge to do it. So it's kind of funny that I ended up here, but I think the way I've kind of gone around it is it's not so much a book about astrology as it is a personal development book
Mm.
that uses astrology.
I definitely found that looking
Yeah.
through it and looking at my star sign. It absolutely feels like that. And so you mentioned junk food astrology there. I want to unpack that because
Yeah.
is that like that little one-liner that you get in a like junkie magazine when you're waiting for your doctor and you go, I know what they mean, and you can kind of
Yeah.
extrapolate it out to like, I think, oh my God, they're really talking about my life, but
Yeah.
it's
I feel
just so
so seen.
general that
Yeah.
it could be anything.
Right. It's like
Mm.
the cliches and the tropes about all of the signs. It's the memes we share on Instagram where we recognize ourselves or we recognize something in a friend. You know, it like paints this really beautiful picture of them. But I call it junk food because it's just a taste. It's just like a little satiating bite. It's not
Mm.
really the heart of astrology. And once we start to understand what astrology is trying to teach us and the depths in which you can go, you'll understand that what you've been consuming and what the naysayers of astrology sort of like flip to the side is not really at the heart of astrology. It's not really what astrology is about.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You use the word naysayer there, and
Yeah.
if you're up for it, I have a clip of one of my favorite organizational psychologists ever. I know you're a fan of his work as well, Adam Grant.
Mm.
And, I think his latest book, Human Potential, is amazing. I'm always like liking, anything he posts. And then he did this tirade on astrology, and
Yeah.
I found myself kind of a little bit hot going, what?
I did
Um,
too. I think what I found so shocking about it was I always kind of viewed Adam Grant, and do you know what? I still have this view of him. I'm not going to hold this against him, but I
mm.
always viewed him as a very sort of like balanced, compassionate man. And this felt like someone had hurt him, and he was on an attack. And I found it really interesting. Anyway, let's
Let's have a
listen
listen,
to it.
hey?
This. I just can't stay silent any longer. Capricorn, this is an intervention. If I were a physicist, I'd rescue you from the Flat Earth Society. If I were a nutritionist, I would warn you about the tapeworm diet. As a psychologist, it's my responsibility to tell you the truth about astrology. Astrologers claim zodiac signs reveal something important about personality. Pisces is loving, Sagittarius is free-spirited, Taurus is loyal, and freaky, according to the renowned stargazer Beyonce. But strong evidence shows these claims are bogus. A study of over 170,000 people showed there was no correlation between any zodiac signs and any personality traits. And divorce rates and happiness levels didn't vary by sign either. If you stop and think about it, the whole idea of astrology is pretty ridiculous. I mean, how could the positions of the sun, the moon, and the planets have any lasting, let alone lifelong impact on your personality? Zodiac signs are just stereotypes. They're generalizations about groups that aren't grounded in reality. In the US, the most disliked signs are Cancer and Scorpio. Not hard to figure out why.
I take offense to that.
But in China, it's Virgos who are seen as prickly and disliked the most. Because the Chinese character that happened to be used for Virgo translates to Old Virgin. And experiments show, look, we need to talk.
Okay. Woo. Did you debate at school, Jordanna, by any chance? Were you on the debate team?
Yeah, I'm
because
a Gemini.
The way you were making notes reminded me of my own debating journey as a Scorpio who loves a bit of vengeance when there's an injustice. And
I loved debate. It was my favorite. Yeah.
Me too. And I could see you were getting ready to get up there and just tear him a good one. So what do you think of that? Like, that must be a lot.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I have heard that tirade in so many different forms before. I'm not going to generalize, but it usually comes from men, and that's okay. That's fine. I think the first thing I want to say is a lot of what he's saying is true, right? We can't determine someone's personality based on their sign. And what he's referring to is someone's sun sign, right?
Yeah.
And we can't. I've met plenty of Geminis that don't have Gemini qualities within them. I've met plenty of Capricorns who are warm and loving and feel all the feels, right? We can't make a judgment on someone based on their sun sign. And it's what every astrologer will tell you. It's so much more complex than that.
Okay,
so that's the first point.
So sun sign, for the absolute uninitiated, this is the one that you have your date brackets and you're told that if you are born between X and Y, you are a Scorpio.
Yeah, it's where the sun was at the time of your birth.
Yeah.
So any baby born at the moment, we're recording this in Virgo season, would be a Virgo. Right. But there are so many other factors in the chart that make up who you are. And yes, it has to do where the planets are at the time of your birth and how can we attribute our personality to the placement of those planets. A lot of the time we can't. It's also going to depend on the person and how self-aware they are. So what I would have said to Adam Grant is, let me read your natal chart for you. I'm going to show you where your potential is. This isn't necessarily what you're exhibiting now, but this is who you have the potential to become, and the qualities that you can lean into, and the challenges and obstacles that you might face. And if we can move through them, then there's this potential for evolution and there's this potential for growth. He also said, like, what did he say? Something around divorce and compatibility. I think there's a lot in that as well. I do what we call synastry charts, where you match two people's charts together and you see how compatible they are. It's actually not something that you would use in that sense. You wouldn't say, are you compatible? Are you not compatible? You would say, this is how the planets align when you put your two charts together. This is where challenges might be in your relationship. And if you don't address them, if you don't work on these things together, then it might lead to divorce. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what you're talking about there is using the chart to discover challenges and overlaps and benefits as well, so that you use it almost as a framework. And see, this is where I find astrology critique interesting, because all of us are drawn to frameworks to better understand ourselves and our place in the world. And there will always be frameworks that resonate with us more than others. And why don't you just let that person have the framework that sort of speaks to them?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as a psychologist, I just find it fascinating that he has that point of view, because what I take out of astrology more than anything is understanding the psychology of people,
Mm.
not based on one sign, but based on the intricate pattern that is formed through all the signs within their chart. And what my new book tells us is that we actually have all 12 signs within us, and there's things that we can learn about the psychology of all of those 12 signs that lie within us. The
Mm.
other thing I want to say, just because we're picking him apart, is
Poor
he spoke
Adam.
about
We love you, Adam, but this has to be done. Yeah.
he spoke about stereotypes as well. And I totally agree. Like, there are so many stereotypes that are attributed to certain signs. I
Mm.
would rather call them archetypes. A lot of Carl Jung's work was correlated with the 12 zodiac signs, and a lot of the psychology that he talks about is very much attributed to astrology. We call it psychological astrology. And you might not be one archetype. Well, you're not one archetype. You are a myriad of all these different archetypes, and different parts of you will come to light at different stages in your life and at different times, depending on what environment you're in and who you're around. And so I think, like, as my final statement to Adam Grant, it's like, open your goddamn mind. He has to have a ton of Capricorn in his chart. He must.
Yeah,
And I've never read, I've read hundreds and hundreds of natal charts for people, and everyone always walks away saying, wow, I feel so incredibly seen. And I don't think that you can find fault in that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And what really resonated with me there as you were talking was the idea that might have a primary archetype, but then there might be shadows of all different types playing into that. And, you know, back to frameworks, you could do your Enneagram, you could do your I mean, there's just so many different things. Yeah,
Myers-Briggs. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Gallup strength finders, like, go on and
right.
on. And there will always be majors and minors. And I feel like astrology is actually, it's not like some woo-woo new kid on the block. It's actually more of an OG when we talk about
Right.
archetypes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much mythology and history, and
Mm.
there's actually what your natal chart is doing is giving context to all of those teachings and all of those wisdoms that have been around for hundreds and thousands of years, right?
Mm.
It's saying, hey, look, let's take all of that, which is all valuable to everybody, but
Mm.
this is your personalized version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in at the very start of your book, actually, I definitely don't want to do crib notes of your book because it's brilliant, and I really think everyone's going to just get so much joy out of exploring the chapters. But you do have this comparison between the Lion King and astrology. Can
Yeah.
you share about? Did that come to you as a like, oh my gosh, look at that?
I'd like to say yes, but no.
No.
So there is this correlation in astrology. The type of astrology that I practice and talk about in the book, we call it evolutionary astrology.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that we have these karmic patterns and this evolution and growth within our chart, and we can choose to go on the quest of evolution, or we can choose to ignore it. There is a narrative that Joseph Campbell talks about when we look at storytelling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the books that we're reading or the movies that we're watching, even the TV shows. And it's called The Hero's Journey. A lot of people have probably heard about it before. You might have learnt about it in high school or at university. I know I did. And it's this idea that there is the hero's journey that we follow throughout the narrative of pretty much every story you've ever read and every film you've ever watched. So whether it's The Lion King or Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or Black Panther, I used a bunch of examples in the book, Finding Nemo, they're all following the hero's journey. And astrology isn't that different. We are also going on our own hero's journey as we make our way through a lifetime, but also through the many lifetimes that will come after this one and that came before this one.
Wow. I mean, that's big.
Yeah.
So how does one, through astrology, look at that timelining of before and after lives to make meaning of it in the now, and
Yeah.
to almost kind of, I'm thinking, okay, this is my ADHD brain for sure, but I think back to learning about how cognac is made. And I was a brand ambassador for this incredible cognac, Remy Martin, many, many years ago. And I went to France and I studied with them. And one of the most romantic stories that they tell is how the maker of Louis XIII, the cognac that has like spirits up to 120 years old in the blend, the maker of those initial 50, 70 years worth of cognac is never going to know the final outcome, but they are
Right.
massively contributing. And it is an honor and a privilege to contribute to that outcome. And I feel like what you're talking about is almost an invitation to see our lives that way.
Yeah, I'd never thought of it like that, but you're right. It is.
Mm.
The idea in the chart is that we enter this lifetime with the natal chart that we're given with our own karmic past. And
Mm-hmm.
through this lifetime, we're working through that karma so we can unlock our potential in this lifetime, but also so we're not carrying it through to the next.
Mm.
Right. So when we look at a natal chart, we can look at lots of different facets of who you are now in this lifetime. But there's also wounding and past experience that you're working through. And the way that we look at that specifically in the natal chart is through what we call the lunar nodes, and also things like your Chiron placement, and
Mm-hmm.
also how in touch you are now presently with the core of who you are, which is your sun, your moon, and your ascendant sign.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. So I feel like
That's a lot.
how are we going to unpack that? Can I ask you then, just
Yeah.
for a really personal example of, as you started to study deeper and deeper into astrology,
Mm,
what you found in your own chart and through the lunar nodes, for example, that you were like, oh, there it is.
right.
Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Before I had dived deeply into astrology and had my chart professionally read, what I didn't realize is that I was very on purpose right from being a child. I
Mm.
mean, I'm an unusual, well, not really unusual case, but I have a lot of the same sorts of signs in my chart. So it's like I had no choice but to become who I became. I've got a lot of Gemini and I've got a Virgo moon, and everything is geared towards communication in my chart. So the
Mm.
fact that I studied journalism, became an author, became a podcaster, and have geared my entire life to communicating with others is no surprise when you look at the chart. When we start to get into the specifics of it, though, it gets really interesting because a lot of my wounds are also around communication. So there could have been a path that I took where I was so afflicted by my own wounds that I didn't take a chance. And this came up for me a lot when I was young. I was told in my early 20s by one of the female bosses that I had that I would never be a writer, that my writing was terrible, and I would never amount to anything. And that could have been a turning point for me, right?
Mm.
That could have been in my hero's journey, the villain that steps in, the Voldemort that arrives and
Mm.
says, you will not make it past this round. You will not make it into the next chapter. But
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, I rose above that and I kept going. And so for me, my karmic path has been to always speak my truth, to always believe in myself, but even deeper, a lot of my communication placements are in the house of spirituality. And for a very long time, I denied my spirituality. I wanted to be taken seriously. Every time I had a meeting with my publisher, I was like, I will write this book about spirituality, but it will be in layman's terms. It has to be targeted to the mainstream audience. I will not be put on the back bookshelf. And that's why it took me so long to write an astrology book, because I was like, I can't write an astrology book. It's going to be so woo-woo. But
Mm.
in the last few years, I've really started healing that aspect of myself as well, because my potential lives in the 12th house. My wounds live in the 12th house. My sun, my Venus, everything is in the 12th house, the house of spirituality. So it took me almost 40 years, but I finally accepted that side of myself. And since I have, my business has changed, my relationships have changed, my public profile has changed. So yeah, it's like we can open ourselves up to certain aspects that we feel called to. But until we know what our obstacles are and perhaps have the courage to overcome them, we can stay quite stuck when there's actually so much potential that we can reach.
Yeah, wow. And it really brings it back, doesn't it? Like some people will have that aha moment in a chart reading. Some people will have it on the couch at their psych's office. Some
Yeah,
people are going to have it going to a Joe Dispenza retreat.
absolutely.
And so everything is really an invitation, I find, to call us to dig deeper into why some of the things come up in our lives that are blocking us, and why we feel naturally inclined towards some things. I mean, maybe you're just happy living life and you don't even need to ask why. I'm a bit of a why person. I really do like
Yes.
to understand, and I feel a peace in deeper understanding of anything, really. And I'm sure that would come up a ton in my chart.
Yeah.
Peace is literally written on
Oh,
my chart.
I love that.
And yeah, so I just think it's it's a beautiful, a sort of like, do we say spiritual science? Is it, because I feel like there's a lot of quantum biology potential in,
There is.
we now know about energetic pools and light, and I just think astrology is such a part of that world, not
Absolutely.
aside from science.
No,
Yeah.
no, exactly. I mean, for a very long time, hundreds of years ago, 16th century,
Mm,
astronomers and astrologers were on exactly the same page,
mm,
right? And then there were a few shifts in what astronomers discovered, which made them debunk a lot of what astrology was saying. And
mhm,
I understand why. I actually go through it in the book. It's quite fascinating. So I'm not going to spoil it here. But the idea with astrology is that it's not so much based on the science itself, although it does stand up with a lot of it, and a lot of it is mathematical, right?
mm,
But it's to do with the energetic vibrations
mhm.
and the intention and the discovery that you have within yourself as certain obstacles and challenges enter your life. And so, like, back to that Adam Grant argument, the idea is you are going to face obstacles in your life no matter whether you believe in astrology or not. What astrology can do for you when you look into your own natal chart is tell you what specific tools will work for you based on your own strengths and weaknesses. So for me, my intellect,
Mm.
my curiosity, my desire to be of service in the world and service to people is my way to navigate through those challenges and obstacles that come up. But for someone else, it's going to be their feeling sense, their empathy, their compassion. For other people, it's going to be their initiation, their action taking, their ability to respond rather than react.
Mm.
So it's just, again, it's like this handbook, whether you believe in it or not, to
Mm.
help you navigate with an abundance of tools that are at your
Yeah.
disposal. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do we dance the fine line between giving ourselves over to what we learn in a natal chart versus using it as an empowerment piece? And I guess what I mean by that is it's easy to say, oh, I guess that's just the way I am. Like,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
how does one use it as an empowerment piece and keep the focus there?
Yeah, that is a really good question because I see that come up a lot. People go, "Oh
Mm.
yeah, that explains a lot." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Okay, so
There are
let
my
me
defects. Let's just, yeah,
yeah."
we're done now.
Well, look, I guess it depends on whether or not you have a natal chart reading. A good astrologer will give you some tools and some takeaways so you
Mm,
can kind of lean into and grow out of certain placements. Um, I think the book actually helps a lot with that. It shows you what the challenges might be and what some of the practices are that are going to help you connect. And one of the things I talk about in the book is when you are leaning into the shadow side of a particular placement in your chart, a lot of the time the remedy for that or the antidote to that is to lean into the opposing sign, right? So for you as a Scorpio, if you find yourself feeling jealous and controlling and things are feeling a bit dramatic and volatile, it's like, okay, I actually need to be tapping into Taurus energy, which is simplicity and security and stability. Right. So there's lots of little tools. But a good astrologer will walk you through that and give you some takeaways so that you can actually apply it.
And that is a really good question. How do you find a good astrologer? Because I'd imagine it's like any profession. There are taxi drivers that like take you 20 minutes around the wrong way when they should have taken you this way.
Right.
You can see a naturopath that just wants to prescribe like $300 worth of supplements every time you walk through the door instead of getting to the bottom of things. There are doctors that say, well, I don't know, your things are normal. Like, I guess you're fine when you feel like shit. So
Yeah.
how do we find a good astrologer so that we are not wasting our time and money, basically? What does it look like?
That is such a good question. Do you know, no one's ever asked me that before. So I've never really contemplated it. But I would say, first and foremost, find an astrologer that you resonate with. We're lucky that we live in a world now where, in order to run any kind of business, you've got to have some sort of platform. So when it comes to astrologers, if they have a podcast, listen to their podcasts. If they have a social media platform like Instagram, follow them for a little while. See if you resonate with the way that they word things, with the approach that they take. I know a lot of people come and see me because they like the way that I break things down in a really practical, applicable way, but also they tend to like my sense of humor. I don't take myself too seriously.
Yeah.
And so I think my podcast allows people to get to know me, and that's why they come to see me. But the other thing I would say about seeing an astrologer is to really have the awareness that, just like any kind of practitioner that's going to promise you a future forecast, it's near to impossible with astrology. Right? So when someone's saying, come and see me, I will tell you when you're going to meet your life partner, when you're going to get married, when you're going to have a baby, none of these things are absolute in astrology. We can say, hey, the planets are doing this at a certain time. This might be the energy to work with if you're looking for love. This might be a really advantageous time to start trying to have a baby, but we can't guarantee anything. And a lot of astrologers will tell you that they can. So that would be the first red flag.
Red flag.
Red flag. I would also say there are a lot of astrologers out there that don't do one-on-one consults with you. So basically you'll enter your details and then they'll record a video and then send it to you, walking you through your chart. Now, what my clients will tell you is the reason that they feel so seen in a reading is because I have the context of who they are. I spend 15 to 20 minutes at the beginning of a reading getting to know someone. Tell me about work. Tell me about relationships. Tell me about your kids. Tell me about your family of origin. What's your relationship with spirituality? Do you feel connected to your intuition? And once I know all of that, then I can start to give context to what I'm looking at in the chart. If someone pulled my chart up and they'd never met me and they had no idea who I was, they would probably think I was quite chaotic and could have a and also I've got a lot of placements in my chart that would allude to me being an addict. Now, I've never been addicted to anything in my life, not even astrology. Like it's just not a part of who I am at all. It's not how I play out my chart. But someone who had a similar chart and maybe did like the taste of alcohol and did like to numb out or escape from things, might walk down that path, right? So I think context is really important. So although you might save a little bit of money by doing an astrology reading where they don't actually have to meet you, I don't think you're going to get true value out of the reading.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
something you mentioned there makes me want to just cement something you said a bit earlier on, which
Sure.
is around knowing what challenges might come up for you in a chart so that you're aware of them and so that you can bust through on your hero's journey, let's say. So if person A and person B have those two Gemini charts that you talked about and one's an addict and one's not,
Right.
then maybe could we say it's because you have identified things in yourself and you had a certain upbringing. So that is where the cultural environmental piece comes in, that allowed you to bust through what might have been weaknesses, whereas person A did not.
Right. Yeah.
And has not.
Totally. Here, I've got two good examples for you. One example is Donald Trump and I have very similar charts.
Okay.
Okay, so we're playing them out very differently.
Yeah.
The other example I always use is I've read for twins before, and the twins have exactly the same chart. Their ascendant will be off a few degrees, but otherwise it's exactly the same. And they are entirely different human beings, but they were also raised the same way, right? So there are so many different factors. A lot of it comes down to free will and your own choice, and certain things that come into your life or come out of your life and what your response is to them. Yeah.
So it's kind of making me think of Miguel Ruiz's work with the Four Agreements, where you're really trying to strip as much back as possible to get to the core of who you really are, to show up in that way in the world.
Yeah. It's really important that people's takeaway from this is that your natal chart isn't saying this is who you are, go and live with it. You know, it's saying, hey, this is who you have the potential to be.
Yes.
And let me show you how to get there.
Because so much gets layered on top of us, as you know, from what our parents say to us when we're little, to some awful school teacher or boss like saying you're never going to amount to anything.
Right.
And it's not the core of who we are or have the potential to be. And so for me, that's one of my favorite reads on astrology, really, that it is one of those really beautiful spiritual paths that you can choose to go down.
Absolutely. I think also one of the most important parts of the chart that is often overlooked is the moon sign. It's our sense of emotional security. And for a lot of people, their sense of emotional security was not nurtured through childhood, where it starts to form and starts to, I guess, activate or deactivate our nervous system, which sets us up for the rest of life. So it's like really understanding your moon sign, helping yourself regulate, understanding how you regulate, how you find a sense of emotional security can absolutely change the core of who you are and how you show up in life. And a lot of the time I will meet people in a reading who are so disconnected from their moon sign.
And so can you give us an example then of a particular moon sign, or with a client in the past in mind, where you're like, whoa, we did this and then everything changed?
Yeah. So I read for a lot of men, and
interesting.
Men, they're always men with water signs, which is so interesting because there is a sensitivity to them, right? So the water signs feel everything. But for most of them, and for men in society, showing emotion, crying as a child was don't cry, don't be a crybaby, big boys don't cry. And this was drummed into them and into them and into them. And now they've come into this world as adults with all of these protective layers around their little watery moons. So it's about giving them permission, and this doesn't happen overnight, but to feel their feelings, to understand that it's okay that a sense of emotional security comes through nurture and being loved. And that might have to be something that you show yourself if it wasn't shown to you growing up. So I think the water signs are really, really important. And if you have children, really nurturing the water within them, especially the little Cancer boys and Pisces boys and Scorpio boys, Yeah.
Mm, fascinating. And so, okay, so can I give you my son's, like, for
Yeah.
example, can we just do a live?
Yeah, let's do it.
I love one of these. We did this in the masterclass and it was so good. So Seb is born, and I will take the date and time out of our recording just for his privacy, but I will.
So Seb is a Leo sun,
Mm-hmm.
a Scorpio moon,
Mm-hmm.
and a Pisces rising. Okay, so that's the core of who he is. If we look at the moon sign, Scorpio feels everything very, very, very deeply. It's very important for Scorpio to have their privacy and their secrets. And so I always say, if you've got kids that have Scorpio anywhere in the primal triad, which is the sun, moon, or ascendant sign, that you let them have their privacy, that you allow them their secrets to a degree where we're considering safety, of course.
Of course.
But it's really important for Scorpio because if you try and stop them, they'll just go harder, right? And they'll keep more things from you. So it's allowing them to have that so they don't feel like they need to. Also, honesty is so very important to them. So as a parent, like always being as honest as you can about everything. Again, factoring in what's safe and all the rest of it, but knowing that just the simplest lie is going to cut so incredibly deep for them. Yeah. Now, he is a Pisces rising, so he's very creative, but he's also feeling everything so much. Lessons for him are around boundaries, empathy. So, of course, empathy is beautiful, but not to the point where you're carrying everyone else's feelings. And also being very conscious of energy. All of the water signs are like sponges.
Oh, he's
So
super spongy, always has been. Yeah.
So just absorbing like all the energy, all the emotions, somebody's mood, right? And it just starts to, I guess, like clog the system in a way, because when you're not clearing that energy, it just lingers, and then you can't determine what is my energy and what's that person's energy, or what am I feeling and what is actually their feelings.
So
right?
what would clearing energy look like?
Salt. So salt water. I would get little Pisces fish into the ocean as much as you can.
He does love a good. We are always the last out of the water in the summer, always.
Yeah, amazing. Epsom salt baths are really good. If you don't have a bath at home, I don't have a bath at home, I like to just do a foot bath with Epsom salts, or like a scrub in the shower with like 2 parts sugar, 1 part salt, and like some carrier oil, and then scrubbing yourself and like having the intention to clear the energy from the day. But most importantly, it's about having boundaries. And, you know, that's something that Seb's going to have to grow to learn. Probably as a child, it's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
But teaching him boundaries is really, really important.
Love that. It's just fascinating to me how you can, there's just so much in there that is absolutely relevant to him, and how much you can use this to move forward in a much clearer way, like to know what you're moving forward with and about and why.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of people need that support, especially I find in this hyper externalized information landscape, where kind of like the example of too much empathy and taking it all in. I feel like we're doing that with information and knowledge as well. And it just all ends up crowding you out to the point where you second guess yourself on everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the point of understanding astrology and understanding your natal chart is to empower yourself. Yes, you might be empathetic and you might call yourself an empath, but you also have the ability to put boundaries in place so that you don't become consumed by it. Or yes, you might naturally be a people pleaser, but it's time to start learning to prioritize yourself. And that's, I guess, the tools I want people to take away from this, because like we said earlier, it's not a prescription, it's about who you have the potential to become.
Absolutely. And can you share a time when you supported someone through their learning about their natal chart and they shared maybe like if there was someone they were really butting heads with, or there was a person in their life that they were like, this person feels like the block. Not my chart, but actually learning about the chart actually
Right.
supported a relationship shift.
Yeah, I think when we can learn the psychology of someone else through their signs and how it interacts with our signs, it gives us a lot of tools for navigating any kind of relationship. I'll use my own example. I have a girlfriend who I've known since I was 18, and she always took everything so bloody personally, and I just never understood it because it would be the tiniest little thing. And I'd feel like I was always saying the wrong thing. And, I didn't know how to navigate myself around her. Then when I started becoming interested in astrology, I realized that her sun, her moon, and her rising sign were all water signs. She was a triple water. So she was feeling everything so incredibly deeply, where I have feelings. Of course, we all have feelings, but I'm very cerebral, right? Very cerebral and very sort of grounded, earthy. So I don't process everything immediately through the feeling sense. I usually apply logic and reason to it. She doesn't do that, right? So everything's coming down to the feeling body. A lot of the water signs will be quite insecure within themselves, prone to anxiety, prone to overwhelm. So now, in the last 6 years or so, I've learned not to hold back from what I need to say to her, but to be a little bit more delicate in my approach, to understand that she's going to feel this quite deeply. So what's the best way to support her in that? To reassure her so that she feels secure in what we're doing or talking about, or yeah. So it's helpful, especially in relationships, the relationships that matter to you.
Yeah, that's it. Because often when relationships matter to us and we feel like there isn't a way forward, you can think the only choice is to end that relationship.
Right.
But I come back to that, the marrying of two people's charts that are butting heads, and actually seeing it as a, challenges and strengths exercise rather than a here's all the places you don't get along, so probably not.
Right. Just as you can have, and I've seen it time and time again, two charts that visibly look so incredibly compatible, right? But if you're not playing out your chart to its highest expression and they're not playing their chart out to its highest expression, then the potential of that compatibility completely dissolves, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, so good. Oh my gosh, I could talk astrology with you for hours, but there's obviously the constraints of time. So thank you so much for joining us. I have a little rapid fire. You don't know this is happening. I'm just going to shoot you two choices with 10 things, and you tell
Okay.
me which one is yours.
Okay.
Here we go. Smoothie or eggs?
Eggs.
Body scrub or body lotion?
Scrub.
Messy kitchen or dirty clothes?
Oh, messy kitchen?
Pilates or yoga?
Pilates.
Dark chocolate or apple crumble?
Dark chocolate.
Mountain or sea?
Oh,
I know they're both good.
mountain.
Sunrise, sunset.
Ugh, sunrise.
Hot chips or spicy marg?
Hot chips.
Pick a bestie, Scorpio or Libra?
Oh,
Your
Libra.
face.
Libra. My bestie is a Libra, so I should definitely
Oh,
say
how
that.
good's that?
Yeah.
And I'm a Scorpio, so this conversation ends now. Okay.
No, I just hang on. I know this is rapid fire. I have said multiple times. I think it's even in the book. Scorpio is my favorite sign. If I had to pick a favorite sign, Scorpio is my favorite. But you guys are also very complex, which is why you're my favorite. So for like best friend material, I think I
Libra's
can
an
read a
easier
Libra
choice.
better. Yeah.
I'm not offended. I'm not offended. Well, congrats on this book. It's amazing that you've managed to wrap as much as you have into it. I know people are already loving it and shall do after this show. Awesome to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you loved today's show as much as I loved bringing it to you. I want to remind you that if you are someone who craves a low tox community that is judgment-free, full of empowerment, has health professionals and building health professionals that can support you, as well as me in there answering questions multiple times a week, I want to invite you to join the Low Tox Club. For the price of less than a cup of coffee a month, you have an annual membership for $49 Australian, so it's about $30 US or Euro, that allows you to have a member masterclass every single month with a health professional or global expert from the podcast, where we have them to ourselves for an hour to ask questions and deep dive further. You have the beautiful supportive chat group. You have Q&As with me answering questions. We read books and talk about them, and a whole bunch more. You can head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the Explore tab, and join the club is the very first option on that list. Of course, we have over 10 evergreen courses that you can jump into anytime, whether it's navigating everyday low tox swaps with our Go Low Tox signature course, whether you have kids and you're wanting to know how to best support them with our Low Tox Kids course, whether you're planning a family and looking at a healthy low tox preconception journey, reducing inflammation, especially the chronic kind, with our Inflammation Ninja course, many other courses. You can again head to lowtoxlife.com, hit the courses tab, and you'll see all of the options, which includes a business course, my Low Tox Method program. A lot of people don't know, but I was doing a lot before starting Low Tox Life in 2009, and I was a business consultant across hospitality, health, retail, and cosmetics. I have been in business consulting for a very long time, so I absolutely adore helping people move into the low tox space or develop their low tox businesses. So that's a way I can support you. And then, of course, there's our wonderful social media communities at Low Tox Life on Instagram, and of course, the website with over 250 gluten-free recipes, blogs, downloadable PDFs to help you navigate wanting to get rid of synthetic fragrances in your school or office. I could go on. So head to lowtoxlife.com, see what takes your interest or fancy, and thank you so much for being a part of our podcast community. I love reading your reviews. I appreciate every follow and subscribe, and I want to just remind you to finish off that if there's anything you heard that you found interesting from a medical or scientific perspective, it is intended as education only. Please always chat to a health professional who knows you and your situation best. I'll see you next week. Bye.